Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. And we're back. Welcome back, everybody. I didn't actually think I would ever make it back here. It's been a lot of turbulence in my world, and from certain perspectives, it just feels like some of this will never be possible again. And then suddenly there's another turn in the road, and here I am. The number of times that I have been mentally incorrect is reaching numbers that are equal to the probability of winning the lottery. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised anymore that when I think something is or is not going to happen, I am usually wrong. Now, what about that feeling part of me? The part of me that's been growing? That part of me knows that I will be talking to all of you. And it's not really concerned about the format. It just knows that there is a steady and growing communication, a steady and growing connection among our kind as all of this is unfolding. We are and will continue to find each other, to remember each other, and to see more of what this entire thing has been. Now, you might be saying, well, Katie, I'm glad you're back because there's a lot going on and we should really talk about it. And there is, isn't there? It's all starting to burn down. It has been burning down now for a few months for those who are listening real time, although you might only be starting to see the true destruction around now. And in some ways, this is demonstrative of our awakening. You might say, yeah, we're finally seeing through the illusion. And here I would raise a question of what exactly has been the illusion. Is the illusion that there have been institutions on our planet that have been doing more and different things than they said publicly? Is the illusion that there are more and different types of beings in our five senses reality than we had seen on the wavelengths of visible light? Or is the illusion much greater still? Depending upon how you look at it, what is starting to occur might be happening on the sidelines of humanity's awakening. It might be kind of the wake from our boat hitting the shore. From the five senses perspective, this may be difficult to pinpoint because looking at a five senses output is oftentimes what attracts us or distracts us or what we focus upon, because those have been the wavelengths that have been material in our perspective of the universe. So it is sometimes difficult to then direct our attention out into a blank field, so to speak, and lean into the detection of more and different things at play. Let me say this. If you thought the early stages of humanity's awakening might have to do with those of us who begin to sense aspects of the unseen, why and when would that aspect of awakening stop? Or could it be that even as the noise raises in volume in our reality, we will still go forward in seeing through it? I've had a really shitty experience the last few nights. I don't know how else to say it. I know some of you feel this way too after it's just been going on for fucking forever. And you wake up and it's like, God, what the fuck is in my head now? Or what was that was inserted in my arm? Or, I'm even tired of talking about it because I know that sometimes that comes back to bite me in the ass. Excuse all this foul language for those of you sensitive listeners, but sometimes it's applicable. So anyways, been having some rough nights. And so I sit down with the chorus in the family room one morning. And as you guys know, since the spring, I can't approach them anymore from the mental questioning. It sort of happens only when I've opened my heart again to possibility and it potentially being okay, which is extremely hard to do after a very unpleasant, violating type of experience. To be honest, I don't know how I do it, and I don't know how I come back to it over and over again, except I think from listening to the chorus all of these years and the AO, I have beliefs that I can lean on about how it could be possible, how it could be better or helpful for me to open to possibility, even when the stakes seem to be getting higher or the situation's getting even more painful. From the mental perspective, this fall has been characterized by my mind feeling like it is conclusive and undeniable that the more I have opened to this shit, the worse my life has gotten. On paper, I can't disagree. My life has fundamentally changed. You could say that I am more alone now than ever. There are more weird things that happen than ever. I feel at times more isolated and different than the world around me than ever. But this other knowing part of me has also grown at a consistent pace. And I have to admit that every time I am finally able to open up my heart again to the chorus, to the AO, to that there could be a loving and empowering perspective of all of this. God, it's such a relief. It's like instantaneous healing. It's like instantaneous stepping into being surrounded by love. I feel reinvigorated. I feel glad. I feel wonder and marvel and curiosity, something that we might sum up as connection. So after a couple shitty nights in a row, I sit down in the family room and I open up to the chorus. And just feeling their love again, I mean, sometimes it's just more than enough. And they encourage me that I'm doing well, that everything's going well, that this is different, this is evolving. I've learned all the things that I wanted to learn about them in particular. And then they asked me a question that I don't think they've ever asked before. They said, "Beloved, where does power begin?" And I said, "I don't fucking know." Honestly, I felt like a small bug under somebody's heel, and I just couldn't even contemplate these concepts. And I felt all of that inside of me as they sat there and waited. They sort of just shine a loving light on everything you're feeling, which brings it to consciousness. I realized that the mental part of me did feel completely powerless, but that soul knowing, growing part of me is actually pretty satisfied with the progress, which made the mental part of me even more terrified because that sounded like I had some sort of sick addiction to being tortured at night by who knows what the hell. And I saw them both. I acknowledged them both and I let them both be true, the way I've learned to do. And then the chorus said, "Beloved, what is power?" Now I see I just asked if they wanted to say it instead of me, but they think this will go better if it comes from a human. Maybe that's because it might not necessarily feel empowering to us to feel advice from beings who are already incredibly powerful. Might hit home, a little closer to home, to hear it from somebody else who's struggling too. So the chorus described for me the aspects of our core frequency. And they said, "We understand that from your perspective, you might feel like power is degrees of ability, where one being, perhaps because of its beliefs, is more capable, is more adept, is more proficient in a particular domain that is material in your five senses or the frequencies on which you are interacting. I said, yep, sounds about right. I think they believe different things than I do, so they're able to do what they do. And I am just barely conscious and not really well equipped. And they said, we acknowledge this perspective. Then they said, but how does that relate to what you uniquely are? Then they went on to describe that by their view, power is the degree to which a being is allowing of its core frequency. How much do you let through everything that you uniquely are? This definition is at once incredibly powerful and beautiful and all encapsulating because its subtleties are astonishing. If you use this definition of power, then by that view, there would be an infinite number of different flavors of power. Because according to them, every being has a frequency, has a uniqueness that is individual among the infiniteness of creation. There is no other you but you. And so expansion, which would be expanding into more of your uniqueness, would be expanding into your power. So if you look at an altercation or a face-off from this view, it becomes more about sort of a manifestation of an experience between two beings where one is more allowing of its nature and the other is not. That creates an imbalance on those frequencies from those perspectives. There is nothing inherently more powerful about one being than another. It is that being's choice of resonance, of expansion, of ability. Now, I, as a human moving through awakening, don't feel like I made a choice to be disallowing of my nature, but I do see how that could be possible based on the years and the history and the perspectives that I've experienced from these other beings. It's also empowering, isn't it? Because it doesn't really matter who else is in the room or how many push-ups you've done. In any instance, you can find energetically ways to be more allowing of what you are and therefore expand in your power. Until perhaps at some point, two beings who are infinitely expanded can punch each other all they want, and neither will experience a negative impact or a destructive impact because they are at full force, they are at full power. It might just be an interesting experience of a different version of another being's uniqueness versus your own, in which case it could only bring to clarity even more your own uniqueness. Up until a day ago, I used to put calendar entries on my calendar with keywords or phrases from weird shit that had happened, and I colored the events yellow. So I'm an organized thinker and I like doing that kind of thing. And recently I looked back over the last couple years of my life, and in particular, in the recent year or so, my calendar is peppered in yellow. I can't recall all of these events at any single point in time. And sometimes when I go back and look at them, which is not often, I feel extremely overwhelmed, especially because I feel a responsibility to connect the dots here and explain them. Maybe because I was born an explainer or I'm their bridge builder or I don't know. Just that kind of personality. I like to see the big picture. And as we've discussed with the suitcase or the hall of mysteries, it has gotten to the point now where I don't think there's any size of book or any size of podcast where I could explain all of these experiences. I can't give you guys the total database. And so in this conversation, I asked the chorus about it. And they said, we know it must seem like jigsaw puzzles all over the ground in a way that will never make sense. But with each puzzle piece that you collect, the connections between the newest piece and the existing pieces is being built. It's just being built in a way that does not fit with mind-based logic to date, meaning the things that we are piecing together likely could not be explained by any concepts in the existing context of our kind. If you're hearing the subtext of what they're saying, that means that your weirdest experiences might not be explainable simply by aliens, angels, dark technologies, government programs, or any other type of concept that humanity has created to date from its existing context. Whoa. Talk about looking at a field of puzzle pieces and not knowing where to start. They said, however, that the only way to build the context is to collect the puzzle pieces. And therefore, every puzzle piece that we consciously remember and bring together from this perspective is ultimately connecting and constructive and demonstrative of our awakening. So I can look at all my calendar events for the last 2 years plus that are yellow all over my calendars. And I can say, there's no way I could ever explain all of this in a cohesive way. Or I can say, holy shit, look at the number of things that this perspective, that this version of Katie is piecing together consistently, which may be why I have unsavory visitors so often. It's because they see the number of things on my calendar too. Little shits. I know what some of you out there are probably thinking. Katie, by seeking to understand, we will ascend and move beyond. That's true. The more experiences I go through with these beings, the more I understand them intimately. And also, I understand my preference too. And this is the final point I would like to make for this episode, and perhaps the most important, and one that we will be talking about in the episodes going forward through the second half of this season. My dear beloved fellow humans, what is an expression of power? If I manage to stand up one night soon and blast them all out of my house with a rainbow of light, am I being violent? Am I unleashing my anger? Should I be more understanding and allowing of these beings? Or am I very simply expressing my uniqueness? Book 3 has started, and we can talk more about that in the episodes to come. But one thing that has stood out to me about this topic of distance is that if we thought the emotions that the chorus brought up in book 1 were challenging, like fear, joy, anger, the emotions that are coming up now in book 3 are logarithmically more difficult and more nuanced. If anything, I feel like all of the topics they've covered to date were simply laying a foundation for some of these bigger questions. Because these bigger questions tap into, in an even bigger way, everything that we are and that we have forgotten that we are. Emotions, sensations of rage, hatred, betrayal, jealousy, despair. These are some of the darker hallways of the human experience. We lump them all into one category called negative emotion. But they are actually very distinct, very different, full of different kinds of information, and heavily related to the ways that we emit and create experiences of distance. And as we make a point of in the earliest chapters of the 3rd book, if you're excited to collapse the experiences of distance, if you are looking forward to wielding your power to travel in any direction that you wish instantaneously, you might find the keys to those abilities are hidden behind some of these more challenging, as we would say, emotions of our spectrum, of our array. If you thought you were being asked to look at your uniqueness earlier in this process, it will now be demanded of you. And as we acknowledge these things, as we awaken to these things, it might feel like everything in our reality is beginning to shake. But let me suggest this. If in the course of all of this shaking and unraveling, you feel the urge to stand up and use your voice, or stand up and use your fist, and already something inside of you might have been triggered and said, Katie, you aren't advocating violence, are you? Well, I would simply ask, if we live in a reality of limitation where there are only so many 5 senses expression of our energies, is it possible that one type of punching could be an expression of a rejection and disconnection from what we are, an anger that is representative of a friction between our most expansive parts and our beliefs of limitation? And could there be an expression of a punch that is actually representative of an allowance of what we are, what we believe, and what we prefer? A 5 senses physical action that actually expands connection, not only for you, but for anyone who comes into contact with that expression. Power could be looked at as the allowance of what you uniquely are. And when actions and words rise up from deep within you in that knowing place of certainty, the energetic effects cannot be overestimated. We love you. All of you. Infinitely. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found these messages to be helpful. May they accelerate you on your path wherever you'd like it to go. For more information on the books which correspond to these podcast seasons, our podcast, live events, or how to get in touch with us, visit katieandthechorus.com. Thanks again. See you next time.